You're listening to Impulse to Innovation. The Institution of Mechanical Engineers podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Helen Mees. As a global community of mechanical engineers with over 120,000 members in 140 countries, the Institution of Mechanical Engineers has been at the heart of the engineering profession since 1847. The institution's mission is to improve the world through engineering by sharing the latest news, views and insight into the creative world of technology and the people that make it happen. This Sunday, the 23rd of June, marks the 11th annual International Women in Engineering Day. And as always, we are celebrating the amazing contribution women engineers make, not just to the profession as a whole, but to society. The 23rd is a significant date as it marks the founding day in 1919 that a group of 7 women from the National Council of Women met and signed a Memorandum of Agreement which created the Women's Engineering Society, WES. WES's early members were campaigners, hands-on engineers, inventors, designers, electricians, pilots, managers and administrators. Many of its leaders and committee members were from the better-off industrial middle and upper classes, but the organisation's work covered women working on the shop floor, making their way into management, those accessing formal education, and even the female end users of engineering innovation, such as the introduction of electricity into the home. Since its inception, WES has become internationally recognised and continues to drive change across the industry, ensuring women have the opportunity to work and be educated in technical fields, and by campaigning for equal rights and equal pay in a sector which remains heavily male-dominated. My guests are Dawn Bonfield, MBE, President of the Commonwealth Engineers Council and past President and former Chief Executive of the Women's Engineering Society. Dawn was the founder of the National Women in Engineering Day in 2014 and in 2015 established the inaugural 50 Women in Engineering list. A materials engineer by profession, working in the aerospace sector, she now runs her own consultancy, Towards Vision, working on projects to improve inclusion in engineering. She was given an MBE in the 2016 Queen's Birthday Honours List for services to the promotion of diversity in engineering. Holly Rees-Barkle is a Fellow of the IMechE and a past recipient of the 50 Women in Engineering Award 2021. She is Strategy and Growth Director for Fraser Nash Consultancy and newly elected Chair of the IMechE's Diversity and Inclusion Committee. Holly has over 18 years' experience in the consultancy sector and is responsible for driving the overarching One Fraser Nash strategy to drive growth across the business. Holly brings a wealth of knowledge and experience to her appointment as D&I Chair from her role as part of the team leading diversity and inclusion in the company, and she is keen to ensure its employees feel empowered to achieve their personal and professional goals, regardless of their circumstances, identity or background. Dawn, it is fantastic to have you on the show today to talk about WES and International Women in Engineering Day. I'm so pleased that you could come on the show.
It's a big pleasure, Helen, to see you again and to join you on the show. So thank you for inviting me.
Tell us a little bit about this year's INWED theme, how women across the globe are really celebrating this wonderful day that we have.
Well, the theme this year is called The Lives of Women Enhanced by Engineering. And it's an absolutely perfect theme for my work, because my work has been around inclusion in engineering or inclusive engineering outcomes. So looking at what we do as engineers and trying to make sure that we are serving as many people as possible and not building in this bias and discrimination into our engineering. Yeah. And it's also a really clever theme, actually, because it's the centenary of the formation of the Electrical Association for Women, which was this group that set up to almost translate electricity and the technical side of electricity to women in the home. Right. So EAW, the Electrical Association for Women, really were trying to enhance the lives of women and take away that drudgery of everyday manual tasks that they had.
Yeah.
So they did all sorts of things to help women use electricity in the home. They had training courses to help them cook and iron and do the home crafts. So they had home craft certificates, and they were the ones that did all of the kind of domestic science work.
Yeah.
They were also really heavily involved in the 3-pin plug standardization as well, and the electricity industry more broadly. So the theme this year, which is enhancing the lives of women through engineering, is a really clever theme and fits in with lots of the work that we do, I think, and brings us back to remember why it is we need that diversity in the engineering sector, so that, we don't just want it for the sake of ticking a box. We want it because we need people who can make sure that we are building a future world that is suitable for everybody. So that's the theme this year, and I'm delighted that they've chosen that.
I think that's a wonderful theme, and yes, I mean you're right. We forget sometimes how communicating what we do as engineers is just as vitally important as the technology that we create, isn't it? To be able to explain back then how electricity was going to change the home and the lives of so many women by having it presented by a woman who understood the subject must have been such a surprise to so many women.
That you're absolutely right. And one of the things we're trying to do is look at that same conversation today, because we've realized that actually we need to be having that conversation about how we use energy in the home today. And women are a very big part of those decisions that are made. They're often the gatekeepers of lots of those purchasing decisions, whether to buy an electric car, how much food they use and waste, where they get their electricity from in terms of renewable companies. So yeah, we're really trying to update the conversations today to see what that same conversation that they were having 100 years ago looks like in today's world, where we are, we know the need to rapidly decarbonize our homes and our electricity supplies. So yeah, it's also very relevant.
Yeah, it is. I would be fascinated to know what those ladies from 100 years ago would think of some of the technologies that we now have in the home. Even just you and I talking today on a podcast, being able to communicate via the internet and all of these things that we rely on for our grocery shopping and all of this thing, they would just be baffled, I suppose, wouldn't they? And very excited.
They would. And it's so interesting to look back, actually. And I've been collecting some of the appliances of the day back then, just to have a display really about what they looked like at the time. Yeah. And some of them are absolutely fascinating. One of them is an iron that plugged into the light in the middle of the room. I remember
my grandmother having one of those.
There we go. So yeah, they're fabulous pieces of kit that you can still pick up if you trawl through eBay.
Yeah, it's incredible. Well, you're going to be announcing this year's Top 50 Women in Engineering Award on the 23rd as well. And the theme of that is, as you said, enhanced by engineering. We often forget the impact women have had in design and development of things that we take for granted today, as you've been mentioning. As the originator of the awards, what benefit do you think showcasing women's achievements in this way has particularly on the winners themselves, but also on wider society? I mean, you've talked about some of the technology from the past there, but what about some of the future technologies and innovations?
I think these awards have a big influence, actually. They are a real visible recognition of the achievements of those 50 women in any one year. And we know the value of having your achievements recognised. You can see it if you've ever done any of the wikithons to try and get a woman, their details put up onto Wikipedia, for example. You will know that they need this recognition and this type of award in order to be seen as being valid, if you like, or valuable enough to showcase on Wikipedia.
Yeah.
So this type of award really gives those women that type of boost to their career. And I've seen so many of the past women, and this year we will have 500 of them. I've seen the way it has boosted their career. You see it in their signatures and in their LinkedIn profile, and it's clearly been something that's very valuable to them. The other thing I talk a lot about is all male panels and how we have to stop using all male panels for things. And one of the responses I often get is that, well, we just don't know who to ask. There aren't enough women out there that we can find to be on those panels. Well, this is an absolute ready source of women that you can go to very easily to find out who is an expert and who you can go to get onto your panel. So, yeah, I think it's very important that we have this type of recognition. But for the wider society as well, I think they also see that these women are role models, and we know the value of role models to young women especially. And if you can see somebody who's done this, then that's the type of thing that really does seep into your subconscious, if you like. Yeah. And it's the same as the work that we're doing now around with blue plaques, to try and get blue plaques on buildings so that it becomes more normalised that you will see the name of a woman and her achievement as a woman engineer. So it's a great way of recognising these individual women for them as winners, but also I think wider society as well.
Yeah, I have to say that I was very proud to be one of those top 50 women in 2021. And it was such an honour to be recognised alongside so many amazing ladies. Every time I see the list and read through all of their achievements, I'm just blown away by all the things that they're involved in doing. It's a great way, as you said, to create role models, particularly for younger women coming into the profession or interested in science as a whole. Do you think that there's an opportunity to create more impact by taking those names out and about, sort of, a roadshow of some sort to promote women in engineering? Is that something that you think we should be doing, pushing harder?
I think there is an opportunity to do that. We create, don't we, a groundswell of activists, if you like, of people who we know are active in this space. And I think the more we can network together and get to know one another and take those names, out and about and showcase them as much as we can, then I think that would go a long way actually to inspiring the next generation. It's difficult to know how to do that, really, I suppose, isn't it? But
yeah,
there's and the other thing that I think, when you mention that, is that I am conscious that we as women do a lot of the hard work in terms of, inspiring the next generation. And whilst, I really appreciate all of the work that we do, I also understand that it gives us a burden, I think, that we carry. And sometimes it can detract from our own career progress, really. But yeah, we're going to do it anyway, aren't we? But I think sometimes I want us to do it, but not in isolation.
Yes.
I want us to have help from the other end as well. So if we are doing it, we get recognition and we get the support that we need. We get the funding that we need to do that. And I think that is what's needed.
As much as you rightly say, it's about us, particularly on the 23rd, but in general, when we're promoting science and engineering, particularly to young people, we also need allies as well, don't we? And that comes back to what you were saying about the diversity and inclusion. It's not just about us as women doing it alone. We have to do it in the broader sense of the businesses we work in and the people who we work for and with.
That's absolutely right. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that brings me nicely on to my next question, actually, because we're now 115 years since WES was founded and 11 years since the INWED Day began. But we're still talking about how few women are in the profession and in engineering. In the UK, the number of women working in engineering and tech has dropped by 38,000 from 16.5% in 2022 to 15.7% in 2023. What are we still missing, Dawn, in terms of, the profession, but also in terms of retaining women in the industry? And what is WES setting out to do? How is WES going to tackle this?
Yeah, I think it's a real wake-up call, isn't it? Seeing those figures and seeing that, I think we've been used to seeing the incremental changes year on year, and we convince ourselves that we're going in the right direction and, it's making an impact, that the work that we're doing is having an effect and we're getting there. And one of these days, we're going to take that step change. But I think this year has really made us think, do you know what? Is this the right way of doing it? And I don't think for 1 minute that we can ever stop doing this, to be honest. But I think it takes more, like I think we were just saying in the last question, I think it takes more than just the grassroots part of society engaging with this issue. We need structural change, in my opinion. And I've got some ideas of what that looks like, as you can imagine. But I think in terms of where, it's like, it's a multifaceted problem. I don't think there's one answer.
Yeah.
And I think WES is like probably any organisation really in terms of the activities it carries out. It's a membership organisation, so it has a whole range of ways that it is tackling this. So it's looking at role models, for example, that we know that's one of the big areas where we can encourage more people into engineering. So it's looking at training of, when you look at the pipeline, if you think of the pipeline, so you go from a young girl who needs to be encouraged into an engineering or a science career. So there's all the sort of outreach work. And then there's the conversion to try to get them into the engineering sector at, say, university or a vocational training qualification. Then they have another barrier where you're trying to get them into their career so they don't drop out then. And then you've got to retain them in their career. Now, we're finding that there's problems right across that pipeline. So the responses have to be according to where the actual problem is happening. And I think WES, probably like many organisations, has something in every one of those different areas, in terms of outreach, reaching young girls, helping students at university stay in university with the student groups that it has, helping early career women engineers find their way, use the network of WES. So, retention as well. I think there's a cultural change that needs to happen in the engineering sector that needs to happen beyond the women themselves. I think some of the work that is done with and for women, but other work is done with the company. So there's, WES has got a big corporate membership, so it's helping them get the culture right in their organisation. But I think that, we know that things change when you get to a tipping point, and I think that we need to get more women through that pipeline and into engineering before we will get to that tipping point, and that they start to feel that is their home and where they belong, and then culture will change because there will be enough of them. So I think it all depends actually on having that groundswell of women that come in, either from, their early career through the engineering normal pipeline, or whether they can come in from the side, if you like, so they can come in later on in their career. We know how difficult it is to encourage young girls to do engineering. Either that's because of careers guidance isn't there, or parents don't see it as the choice for their daughters. So if we can't change that, one thing we can do is help them later on in their career where they think, maybe I could have done engineering, or I'd like to do engineering now. So, there's pathways in that we can exploit. So I think we have to just get more of that group of diversity in engineering before it will change properly and we'll get the retention.
Yeah, I agree. And I think now as well, our careers are much longer in terms of staying on into work well past our 50s and even 60s. And women's requirements also changing through that part. I'm finding that now in my later life, that my requirements are very much different to what they were when I was in my 20s as an engineer. And so it's recognising those differences and being supportive throughout the industry, I think. And you're absolutely right. I think it's not just about women kind of creating the groundswell, it's also about changing the viewpoints of industry as well. And we know from our own experiences that can be terribly difficult, can't it?
It can, yeah. And I think, if we could turn that to our advantage, then I think if we get women to come into the industry who have had experiences elsewhere, I think that's to the benefit of the industry. we know that we need to be working at these boundaries. And if we can have people who are able to bring those skills that they've gained elsewhere into engineering, we will benefit from that as well. So it's like having children, coming back from maternity leave. I think one of the things I always say is, you should be taking a step up in your career, because you have learned so many incredible skills when you've been off work with those children, looking after a family, doing all of the things that you need to do as a parent. They are absolutely beneficial to your career. So you should be going back into that workplace and stepping up into a promotion rather than down into something, that wasn't quite as good as when you left.
Yeah, absolutely. I think project management and safety and risk assessments are two things that most women learn from managing children.
Negotiating skills.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely something we need to look at. I mean, I remember a few years ago as well, there was a figure of, I'm sure it was about 23% or something, which was supposed to be our tipping point that would be enough for us to change the balance within the engineering community. We're clearly quite some way away from that figure. I'm guessing that really it's down to us now, I suppose, to really push hard in the next few years to try and reach that 23%. But there's a lot of work for us to do, isn't there?
Mm-hmm. There is, yeah. There is a lot of work to do. And to be honest, some areas are doing much better than others. So I think using only one, percentage figure to represent where we are sometimes can be misleading, because some areas we're doing a lot better than other areas. So, and for me, the areas where we need more people to work in engineering is around climate change, biodiversity loss, and all of the areas around renewable energy and our sustainable future. So if we can attract people into those careers, which I think is very likely that we can do, because, I think we know that women do care a lot about people and planet. Yeah. And so sometimes I think we need to let go a little bit of the idea that we have to create engineers. And actually, if we can skip the sermon on engineering and just tell people what it is we're looking for, and that we need dedicated, passionate change makers who can help us achieve this sustainable future. If you call it an engineer, great. It doesn't matter if you don't know, because I think that's the ultimate goal that we're aiming for.
Well, I think you're right. I mean, we forget the nature of the word engineer, don't we? The first thing that most people think of is someone in dirty overalls and a spanner and a hard hat. But the word engineer is about somebody who is a change maker, as you described, someone who takes things and turns it into something else. And you don't necessarily need to come directly from a science background to do that, to be in that engineering community. So perhaps we need to focus more on understanding the word engineer, rather than actually just assuming what it is and what it has been in the past.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think engineering is changing, because and one thing I do know is that if we want to bring the public along with us in some of the changes that are necessary for adaptation and for resilience to climate change, we will need to be explaining to everybody, what this means to people. And we won't be able to get away any longer with saying, well, it's fine if you don't want wind energy in your back garden. That's okay. We won't have to have it. You won't have to have it. No, actually, you do have to have it. And this is why you have to have it. Yeah. So we need those people who can explain things to one another in a way that makes it real and,
so it's not accessible. It's all about accessibility, isn't it? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Now, Dawn, you have had a really incredible career in engineering, not just in the industry itself, but as an advocate and an activist for the profession, not just for women. What words of wisdom would you share with our listeners in helping them to achieve greater things in their career going forward?
Well, that's a hard question. One of the things this year in particular, when I look at where we are and the fact that the numbers of women in engineering are going down slightly, or seem to have gone down slightly, it makes me cross, actually. It makes me cross that we are where we are. And I want us all to become activists and to speak up. And I think sometimes as women, we can drop out of the sector because we don't speak up. There aren't enough necessarily of us to be able to have our voices heard. But I think we're getting good at having our voices heard. You know, we have had probably now 10 years of women finding their voice and of girl power, in fact. And, you know, we are much more likely now we're all likely, not just women, we all know what fairness and inclusion looks like.
Yeah.
So now's the time to speak up and not be shy about having your voice heard. And if you can see something's wrong, then say it. You know, don't be reticent. Take action. And I think that would be my message to people. Don't sit back and, I've been guilty of saying to people before, you know, if you don't like it, then walk away from it. Maybe I'm not going to say that so much anymore. If you don't like it, then say it, you know, change it. So, yeah, time for action.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I think we've for many years, we've now got our seat at the table, but now we need to really speak up, don't we? And I think perhaps in the 11th year of INWED, this might be the year that by talking about how women have enhanced engineering, this is a time to raise our voice and really make a difference. So, Dawn, thank you very much for joining me on the show. I really appreciate having you, and have a wonderful International Women's in Engineering Day.
Thank you very much, Helen. It's great to see you again too. Thanks for having me.
Holly, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. It's a real pleasure to have you, and particularly because you're new into the role as chair of ED&I. So having just become chair, and congratulations, what does that mean to you really as a woman in engineering?
Thank you, Helen. It's great to be here. I wanted to contribute to the IMechE because I'm a chartered engineer and I'm a fellow of the IMechE. And it was important to me, it sounds really cheesy, but I wanted to give something back to the institution and to the engineering profession and not just have letters after my name.
Yeah.
I previously did PRIs, or professional review interviews, where I interviewed candidates coming forward for chartership. And I really enjoyed that, and being involved with the institution and just seeing what our less experienced engineers had been up to, and just getting that view from them of what else was going on in the industry and more widely in mechanical engineering. And I found that great fun, and I learned a lot from it too. But then the role came up to be involved with the D&I committee, to be chair of the D&I committee.
Right.
And I felt that I was in a position where I could have a influence in that respect. So I chaired the Fraser-Nash D&I committee, and I've led a number of initiatives specifically for women in Fraser-Nash and supporting women in the engineering profession. And I thought that I could apply that experience elsewhere, and also to bring that industry experience to the IMechE, but equally to learn some great stuff from the work the IMechE have done thus far as well, and to apply that into my day job. So to give an example of that, the IMechE, we've recently relaunched the inclusion moments. So these are some short moments that you can use at the start of a meeting to have a discussion around particular D&I aspects. And it really encourages people to think about D&I as part of the kind of their day-to-day work, and to think about how we can kind of have those discussions more widely and just bring it to the forefront, really. So they're available on the IMechE website for use from anybody. So that's kind of a way that people can get involved if they would like to.
Yeah, well, we'll definitely add those onto the notes from the show, so we can make sure that people can access them after the podcast. But I think you're absolutely right. You get to a point in your career, I think, don't you, where it's really nice to be able to give something back, whether that's through volunteering within the institution or through volunteering or being part of other opportunities within your business. I think it does feel, and I think I think that's the nature of engineering, isn't it? That you've spent years and years studying, years and years working in industry, and then be able to provide that back to people who are now coming into the profession. It is quite a nice feeling.
I think it's really important. I think it's really important to have visible role models.
Yeah.
There's that saying, you can't be what you can't see. And I think as we gain more experience and particularly become chartered and fellows, it really is important to kind of give back and to show people what the art of the possible is.
Yeah, most definitely. Now, in the UK, the number of women working in engineering and tech has actually dropped in the last year or so by 38,000. That's a shocking number, really. So it's dropped from 16.5% in 2022 to 15.7% in 2023. What are we still missing as a profession in terms of retaining women in the industry, do you think? And what is the D&I committee strategy to increase the number of women, particularly coming into the mechanical engineering sector?
Yeah, it's really sad, those statistics. And I think there's two areas in particular that we need to work on. One of those is attraction and improving the pipeline.
Yeah.
So particularly working in the areas of STEM, working with STEM ambassadors to really get out into schools and show what different careers are available in engineering. So I work in engineering consultancy, and when I did GCSEs and A-levels, I didn't know that consultancy was a thing.
Yeah.
I thought mechanical engineering was always very hands-on, but actually a lot of my time now is spent behind a computer or actually dealing with people or leading or assessing things from a computer. And I think at the time when I was 16 or 17, I thought mechanical engineering was all about fixing a washing machine. So kind of changing those perceptions, I think, is really important. And then there's that retention piece as well. How do we retain people in the industry? And how do we support people after chartership? I think there can often be quite a lot of support for engineers in those first few years, particularly if they're going through graduate development programs or working through the MPDS scheme, for example, to get to chartership. But then what do we do after that? Going on to the IMechE in particular, we have a 5-year D&I strategy, and we have a D&I committee, which is made up of members of IMechE staff and also broader members of the IMechE. And we're there to help deliver that strategy and also review it on a regular basis. We have a focus on women in engineering, but one of the reasons we have that focus is because that's where we have the data.
Yeah.
We do struggle to get data for other minority groups, and that's something that we need to work harder on to ensure people understand what we need that data for and why we're collecting it, and to ensure people feel that they can trust us with that data as well. I think that's really important. So some of the things that we're looking to do is increase visibility of minority groups. We want to increase visibility on our committees, and we also want to increase visibility at IMechE events in terms of attendance at them, but also participation. So having more people from minority groups who are speakers at events or perhaps can chair those events, because it comes back to that visible role model element. You can't be what you can't see.
Yeah, absolutely.
And one of the things we're doing is working with a number of organisations. So we've partnered with a number of organisations. One of those is WES, or the Women's Engineering Society, and another is She Can Engineer. And they are a charity who are working to close the gender gap in the engineering industry. And we also partner with some organisations that support some of the other minority groups. So, for example, we're a partner with AFB, who are the Association for Black and Minority Ethnic Engineers, and the IMechE had a stand at their recent annual conference, which was a great event to be part of.
You make a very good point there about the fact that this is not really just about women, is it, in terms of the number? I mean, 16% is nothing really when you consider the size of the sector as a whole. But equally, it represents what's going on in other areas, as you mentioned, minority groups, where there's even less representation and fewer role models for people to see and emulate. But we have quite a lot of work to do, don't we? Do you think the IMechE is really kind of leading the way in this and making sure that we're enabling our members to have representation in this way?
I think D&I is always going to be a journey. I think there is always going to be more to do. And I think the IMechE have made some really positive steps. I think where we struggle is communicating some of the excellent stuff that we've done across our member population. So I'll be honest, I didn't know an awful lot about what the IMechE did in the D&I space until I interviewed and prepared for the interview for the chair role.
Yeah.
And when I started to dig into it, one of the activities that I looked at is how do the IMechE compare to some of the other professional institutions? And we do have a 5-year strategy, and we do have a number of recommendations that are based on that. And we do track progress against those recommendations. So if you had a look at our website, there's a recent update on how we're tracking against the recommendations in the strategy. We also have a really great support network. So there's a variety of webinars, for example, that are available around kind of parenting, financial support, a number of things that I just didn't know were available, but they're all there and accessible through our website.
Well, again, we'll make sure that there's a link, particularly to the support network, which do an incredible job very quietly in the background of the IMechE. And they are really supportive of our members in whatever stages of their professional career. So we'll make sure that we put a link on the website to that, Holly, as well. Now, we're nearing International Women in Engineering Day. How are you going to mark that celebration? And what does your company, which is Fraser Nash, how did they support the day?
So last year, we had one of our people, Sally Hall, was recognised in the WE50 Awards, which was fantastic. And it was great to be able to celebrate her success with her and to attend the WE50 event. We encourage other people across the organisation to apply for awards. And I think this can often be very difficult for people because I don't think it comes naturally to shout about our successes.
True.
And we're very used to writing kind of technical reports. So actually writing something in the first person, shouting about our successes can be very difficult and not something that comes naturally. So we try to support our people in terms of applying for those awards and shouting about themselves. We also are looking to celebrate the success of our ERG. So within Fraser Nash, we have a number of employee resource groups, including one for gender equity.
Right.
And they work together with the D&I committee to provide a network of like-minded individuals so they can discuss and have conversations in a safe space, but also have an influence over the wider D&I strategy. And on International Women's Day, we're looking to celebrate some of the successes so far of that ERG. So, for example, earlier this year, we hosted a panel event within Fraser Nash. I was part of the panel, as was our managing director, and also some male allies as well, who gave some really insightful opinions during that discussion. And we focused it on some of those areas that are perhaps a bit more difficult to talk about. And it was a recorded session that went out across the organisation. So we're looking at what more things like that we can do to support and celebrate women across the company.
I think that sounds fantastic, and it's really nice to hear that this goes beyond the Women in Engineering Day, but includes everyone, as we should do within our industry. So, Holly, thank you so much for joining me on today's show. It's been a pleasure to meet you for the first time, and I wish you all the best in chairing what is a fantastic committee. And there's a wonderful selection of people from across the institution and outside who are part of that team, who are really working hard to ensure that we have an open institution that's a home for everyone. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And it's great to be able to continue the fab work that the D&I committee have done so far.
Absolutely, yeah. We have to thank the likes of Isabel Pollock-Hull for that, who you are stepping into some very big shoes there, really, aren't you?
Very big shoes.
But no doubt she will continue to support you as you take on your chair role. So I'm sure you're in good hands.
And I just would like to say a big thank you to the people across the institution who I've met so far. Everyone has been extremely encouraging and welcoming, and it's been really nice. And I felt very welcomed into the IMechE organisation, the IMechE group.
That's fantastic to hear too, because this show is all about our members, but actually we have an incredible team of staff who support and help us get through all of the things that we do. You know, we are one family, really, aren't we? It's not staff and members. We all work together to achieve the goals of the institution. Thank you very much. That's all for this month. In next month's episode, we will be looking at how athletes will be beating the heat in Paris for the Olympic Games, what technology engineers are developing to keep them cool, and what role fluid dynamics plays in understanding biological systems. You've been listening to Impulse to Innovation, the Institution of Mechanical Engineers podcast. Thanks for listening. We'd love to hear from you, so if you'd like to share any news or any feedback with us, then please email us podcast@imeche.org. All the information on this episode can be found in the episode notes.